Hey there, winos. This is Vince.Wine. That's just a perfect night for me to just chill with a glass of wine, enjoy my beautiful fire here, and I know that spoopy Halloween time is over, but I thought this is kind of a great night to just sit around by the fire and get into some wine myths. You know, with thousands of years of winemaking history, there's a lot of kind of crazy stuff out there that people believe about wine. So tonight, I sort of want to debunk those wine myths. I want to go over the top 10 wine myths that people still believe and see if any of them hold any merit. That and more in today's Uncorked. Hey, thanks for joining me. And before we get started today, if you want to be a winoceros, hit subscribe on this channel to become a wino today. I'll put out new videos every single week, so be sure to hit that bell icon to stay notified for more great wine content. All right, I got my nice and toasty fire, nice glass of wine. Let's jump into myth number 1, which is that wine gets better with age. You know, the truth is, not all wine gets better with age. Wine changes condition over time, and so it tends to move from that really big, powerful fruit into sort of a more elegant and complex creature in your glass. Wine doesn't last forever. It's not going to go hundreds of years, and certainly there are 100-year-old bottles, but they're probably not drinkable. The average lifespan of a red wine, if you have a high-end producer and it's a wine with a lot of tannin and acidity, think like a Cabernet Sauvignon, that'll last you maybe 10, 20, 30, 40 years, but that has to be a super, super high-end wine. Those sort of medium tier wines are probably gonna die out after maybe 10 to 20 years at most. And for white wine, it's actually even worse. White wines tend to last, I shouldn't say worse, but shorter lifespan. They tend to last, again, that mid-tier level, they're gonna last maybe 4 to 6 years, maybe 8 years at the most, but I definitely encourage you to drink white wine as young as you can and almost as soon as you can get it, because it'll show a lot of that freshness that you're sort of thinking about when you want a white wine. So what am I saying? Am I trying to tell you don't age your wine? Certainly not. The truth is, it all depends on what kind of level you want to enjoy your wine at. Remember that fruitiness and that powerful oak and vanilla and fruit is going to sort of soften out and give you more of those sort of aged fruits. So that's when you start to get like pruniness, dried fruits instead of fresh fruits, earthy and spicy notes, and that tannin and acidity structure is going to be mellowed out. And for a white wine, it's going to get darker and darker and darker in color with the age, and you're going to end up with something a little bit more thick, nutty, and sort of appley as well. So wines not having an expiration date? I don't think so. That myth is debunked. Not all wines get better with age. Oh, and one quick thing about that, wines can also reach sort of this tipping point where they're getting good, better, that sort of nice age characteristics of fruit, and then they just fall off and they really turn sour or vinegary or acidic or just lose their overall flavor profile, and you kind of miss the mark on that. And the good news is that a lot of producers tend to tell you when is the best time to drink their wines, or at least wine reviewing websites and apps will help you with that too. Okay, myth number 2, the more expensive the wine, the better. You know, that's actually not the case 100% of the time. Okay, look, certainly the more expensive the wine, you're probably gonna end up with a high quality producer, but it's not always true. A lot of the wines that are like in the $1,000 range or even several $100 range, you're actually probably paying for the label. You're paying for the pedigree that comes with that particular producer. You can honestly find some phenomenal wines that are in the $40 range. I think $40 is about that mid-tier for me, where I feel really comfortable with what I'm probably gonna get out of the quality for that price range. And then of course there are those $20 and under wines that you can find really phenomenal wines. If you've been an avid wino watching my channel, you have seen some $20 and under wines that have been pretty darn good. And then on the flip side, yeah, you gotta be careful once you get sub $20 because you're probably gonna find some pretty crappy wines. There's a ton of crappy wine out there. And if you're at that $20 under range, you gotta just be really careful, know your producer, see the reviews on it. But you can do really well and have some really impressive wines at about that $40, $50 price range without having to spend hundreds of dollars or even $100 just to find a good wine out there. There are tons of 90-point wines out there at even that like $14 price range. So pay attention to the reviewers that you would like to subscribe to, me for example, and just see what people are generally saying about the wine. You're probably gonna find some fantastic wines without having to spend top dollar. So myth number 2, the more expensive the wines are better? I don't think so. Busted. Okay. So tonight I am definitely just drinking. By the way, I'm drinking one of my favorite producers in Paso Robles. I really enjoy that area, a lot of limestone terroir. Just if you're curious, it's a Grenache Mourvedre Syrah blend. Okay, next myth. And this one's sort of kind of near and dear to me, and that is the idea that if the wine has a screw cap, it's not a high quality wine. That is the absolute worst lie ever. As a matter of fact, there are some countries that only produce wines that have screw cap on them, namely New Zealand and Australia, and that's because cork, natural cork, that's real wood that has the ability to have a lot of flaws in it. You get a lot of this moldiness, or what we call TCA, which is a fungus that grows on the cork, and those corks can fail. So actually, you're getting more popular and more higher quality wines with screw cap, but screw cap just tends to keep in the freshness of a wine. And contrary to popular belief that says, oh, you can't age a wine with screw cap, that is not true. Some screw caps are actually designed to let trace amounts of oxygen in through the cap. So that means your wine can age over time. So don't be too quick to turn your nose up at a wine that's a screw cap. You're probably in for a treat, especially if it's from New Zealand or Australia. Myth number 3, busted. Okay, myth number 4 is kind of a silly one, but it actually is widely popular. It actually is something that even I believed in all those many years ago when I first started drinking wine, and that is this little guy right here. This hole at the bottom of the bottle, that's called the punt of the bottle, and it exists so that you can pour your wine with one hand freely. So myth number 4 is the deeper the punt of the bottle, the higher the quality the wine. Okay, I know that sounds like crazy, but it's really a widely believed myth, and like I said, it's something that even I considered might be true, but the truth is that no, there's no glassware that screams quality over any other. It's just a design choice for that producer and how they feel their wine is best served. So myth number 4, debunked. Okay, myth number 5, and this is really important, especially for you new wine drinkers out there. A lot of times you hear people talk about the kind of fruits that are in here, right? So for example, on here I'm getting raspberries, blackberries, a little figginess, and yeah, a little chalky limestone underneath there. And myth number 5 is all the fruits that people describe in a wine was used to make the wine. Okay, this is not true. When we talk about limestone and raspberry and blackberry and minerality, we're not actually saying that there is limestone and raspberries in this wine. We're saying that there is a likeness of those fruits, a reminiscence of those fruits existing in this wine. Vitis vinifera, that's the wine grape. It is sort of a chameleon, and it does take on flavor characteristics from things that grow around it. So for example, a limestoney soil will usually show up as limestone characteristics in your wine. In that case, where does something like sweaty saddle come from, right? Again, that's all a likeness of things happening in that wine. Sweaty saddle can come from a fungus called Brett or Brettanomyces. Again, just sort of gives you that likeness of it, like barnyard or goat or sweaty saddle. Now, you can say this is totally all subjective, right? Like, really? Sweaty saddle, raspberry, isn't that all subjective? Yeah, it is subjective, but it's unmistakably in there too. If you take 10 master sommeliers and put them in 10 different rooms and give them this wine, all 10 of them are going to tell you that they smell raspberry, blackberry, and limestone in that wine. So yeah, it's subjective, but at the same time, that likeness is so strong and powerful that it's unmistakably in there without those fruits ever literally having been made into this wine. So myth number 5, busted. Hey there, winos. Thanks for making it to the end of this video. I actually ended up having a lot more to say than I originally anticipated, so I've cut this video into 2 parts. So be sure to join me again next week for part 2 of the top 10 wine myths. And until then, drink safe and drink well.